Well, guys, it's the end of May, and as you know, it's been a crazy year when it comes to AI and LLM updates and model releases and things like that. This is an article actually written back in March, but it sums up kind of what Claude has been leading the pack doing over the past several months. And of course, they've had continual releases since this was written, like Opus 4.7, for example. But this sums up just how active things have been. And it also highlights some of the amazing use cases that these new Claude updates have provided, whether that's building websites or apps using Claude Code or managing your team better using Claude Cowork or Claude for Chrome. There's been upwards of 50 products shipped over the past 4 months. You already know Claude has been moving rapidly, but I think most people, including a lot of the product managers, project managers, builders, developers, people like that I've spoken with, I think they're only aware of maybe 10% of everything that Claude has output over the past, now what, 6 or 7 months. So of course, the end of November saw Opus 4.5. And the big deal here was primarily the cost. It was about 67% cheaper. It used 76% fewer tokens, and it scored higher than any human on Anthropic's internal engineering exam, which is crazy at the time. And then so December and January were fairly quiet on the model front. They were working on Opus 4.6, but there were a lot of improvements on some of the other Claude integrations, like Claude Code in Slack. So now you could have your agents intertwined into your Slack channels and communicating with your other team members. I've actually consulted with a lot of agencies who've incorporated this and have seen much more efficiency as a result of interconnecting their agents into their Slack channels. We saw the Claude for Healthcare thing in January. And then February came around and we saw Opus 4.6 and Sonnet 4.6 both getting those updates at the start of the month, as well as Claude Cowork now working on Windows. Now, Opus 4.6 was a big deal because it pushed that context window up to 1 million tokens, which was tremendous. That was roughly 750,000 words held in one working memory all at once. And it can sustain focus on complex tasks for upwards of 14 hours. I honestly don't know what the average person does with that, but for anyone running super deep research or long multi-step workflows, that was a pretty major capability jump at the time. And then Sonnet 4.6 came out, and that was really equally great for a smaller price point than the Opus. It had near Opus intelligence, but at about 1/5 of the overall cost. And then you have Cowork, which I slightly mentioned before. Now, this was actually the one, when you look back here at the SaaS stocks crash, that was more or less due to Cowork. And it really was an initial freak out to this thinking that, oh, well, now that Cowork can essentially do all of these things that all of these SaaS tools could do, like DocuSign and all these different tasks, is there really a need for these tools anymore? And so you saw these big declines in SaaS stocks, like Thomson Reuters dropped 16% in a day, LegalZoom fell 20%, Salesforce fell, Adobe fell, DocuSign fell, and analysts were starting to call it the SaaS apocalypse, right? And one of the amazing things about the release of Cowork is Anthropic did say that it was created more or less from Claude Code in about 10 days, which is pretty wild. This was a post from someone right around that time when the stocks crashed. It says, I installed Claude Cowork yesterday, and 2 hours later, it produced 14 job descriptions, Q1 marketing strategy doc, 47 partner emails I'd been avoiding, and website copy for 3 announcements we hadn't even scheduled. And that's really what a lot of people were starting to discover with Claude Cowork, is that it was taking a lot of those mundane tasks to some extent and really streamlining them to levels that we hadn't seen before. And the best part is for people who had been a little hesitant on jumping on the Claude train before, because maybe they're not super tech oriented and they were intimidated by working in a terminal with Claude Code, they saw Claude Cowork as the next best solution, right? Because basically they can do a lot of the stuff that you could do in Claude Code, but it's a much more user-friendly interface for people who aren't that tech oriented. So it really opened the door to a lot more users during that time. And pretty soon after that, we saw Claude entering the spreadsheet realm. So just like we'd seen with Google for Sheets and how Gemini integrates into Sheets and Google Docs and that kind of thing with the Google Workspace, Claude started to do that as well. And this really changed the game in Claude's favor, because now the people who'd been using Gemini and been really leaning on that were starting to see, hey, I could probably cut off my Gemini subscription for the time being, jump over to Claude, because it also does these myriad of other great things, and you have co-work, and you have all sorts of other options that you can use. So that was really, I think, a pivotal moment for Claude, because it started to, again, continue to show that average user that's maybe not super tech oriented, but more the marketing managers and the product managers, those types of people at marketing agencies. Hey, we can use this, and it's going to enhance our workflows. Now, as we got into March, there's a few other interesting things that were released. This one wasn't talked about as much, but I think it is worth noting, and that's the dispatch to computer use that was shipped in March. And this creates an ongoing connection between your phone and your laptop, and you're able to pair them via a QR code. So you can send Claude tasks from anywhere. So let's say you have to hop on the train, but you need to have a task kind of done during that time. You could just message your desktop, assuming it's on, and have the desktop handle that task for you. So this is really what turned Claude into that remote employee type of LLM, which I think is only going to become more pervasive. And we've seen here this week, right, with Google's announcements about Spark and, these different autonomous agent type of upgrades they're making. It's clearly to get in line with tools like Claude Cowork and Claude Code. So I think the back half of the year, we're probably going to see more noise out of Claude themselves as well in this respect. And then there's everything else that shipped over the past few months. So you had Claude in Chrome, you have Claude Code itself, of course. You have the MCPs, which is the open standard underneath all of Claude's integrations. Essentially what an MCP is it connects all of your other tools into Claude. So you can use the intelligence and you can use the data from those tools paired with the intelligence of Claude. I think that's the best way to say it. And so you're able to harness just amazing things out of combining, let's say, Ahrefs to do keyword research, or let's say you want to use a QuickBooks integration to go in and pull a set of expenses for your business. There's so many things you can do with the MCP connections, and it's been such a game changer for me in my business, as I'm sure it has been for you guys as well. There's also the Claude in Chrome, which of course is that browser extension that can analyze pages and click around for you, which is just another step towards that AI autonomous agents stage that we're headed for very quickly. And finally, the announcement that the memory now works across all users, whether you have a free plan, a pro plan, a max plan, it doesn't matter. You could import your ChatGPT and your Gemini history into Claude and into all of your projects, and then you have that built-in memory ready to go. So like myself, I would have fragmented information. I'd have some things in Gemini Gems, some things in ChatGPT, maybe Perplexity, whatever. Being able to put that all into Claude using their memory is a must-have, so that you're not as fragmented across different interfaces like that. So to wrap it up, that is 50-ish or so products. I know we didn't name all of them, of course, but trust me, they're there in 4 months. This article was written in March, so it's been obviously way more than 50 now. We're in the end of May, but it just gives you a lot of context here. Really, you could probably say it's been over 60 products, maybe 70 products in 6 months, which is only scratching the surface for sure. If you've been one person who's only been using Claude for writing or analyzing PDFs, things like that, it's time to really start using its full capacity, because it does so many amazing things, and it's going to improve your workflows, your business, just the work that you put in at your job. If you're working at an agency or anywhere, it can really enhance what you do. It's not going to replace you at this point, although could argue it's getting close, but realistically, it's just going to further enhance what you do if you give it the right information to enhance, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what the back half of the year brings. I'm sure we're going to have a lot more releases and a lot of stuff to look forward to. And once again, if you enjoyed this content, leave a like. It is a really good way to help get this stuff promoted a little better, and go ahead and subscribe to. That'd be really cool. And we're just trying to bring you different topics regarding AI, SEO, AEO, GEO, all those fun acronyms that we love to spit around and sound smart with. So yeah, until next time, peace.